Okay, so we're going to start out here. We're going to make some old school French croissants here, completely by hand. I have bread flour here, some honey, salt, fresh cake yeast, or otherwise known as compressed yeast, some granulated sugar, and some organic whole milk. And so first thing I'm going to do here, we're going to start out just by putting this fresh yeast right into this milk. It's cold milk, and I'm going to kind of dissolve that with a whisk. You can do this in a mixer. If you have a larger stand mixer, that'll be fine. But I really like doing this process by hand, so that's what I'm going to do here today. And also, this is a very large recipe. I have some samples that I need to take around to some people of some different pastries, so I'll leave a recipe, the exact same recipe, only a smaller batch size for you guys down in the description box below. But so you can start just by dissolving up that fresh yeast into the milk, and we can put the granulated sugar in there, and then just add in the honey to this. Make sure that's completely dissolved real well. And then I'm going to just take this granulated salt here and throw that over top of the flour. Just simply whisk that into the flour. Then just kind of make a well here. If you're doing it in a mixer, you would just repeat the exact same steps just in your mixer with a dough hook. But in this case, I'm just going to very simply put that milk in there. The milk, the honey, the yeast, and the sugar. And then now you want to mix this pretty well. You're not making bread, you're making croissants, but you still want to work this a little bit. So let's start out here with a rubber spatula, and then I'll probably switch to just using a dough card here to work it a little bit. And now what I'm making here right now at this stage of the croissants is I'm making what the French call the DETROMPE, or basically the base dough, before we'll be laminating the butter into this. So then once you have that all combined, then you can just take a dough card here and just kind of work this together. And if you're doing this by hand, then there's really not any fear of overworking it too much. I'm not even really going to bother, I don't think, turning this out onto the marble. I'm just going to work this until I don't see any flour left. Just for a minute or two. Really, the magic happens by letting this develop and rest in the refrigerator overnight before you are laminating it. Just make sure your refrigerator is as close to 40 degrees as you can get it. You don't want this proofing overnight in your refrigerator to any great degree. You just kind of want to let the flavors develop, and a lot of the development happens during the time that the dough is resting. So then once you have it all together, you can just kind of turn it upside down like that. Gather it together. Should be slightly sticky. And now what I'm going to do is just take a sharp knife and cut an X into the top of this pretty deeply. And this will stop any kind of real gluten development, the gluten strands from really getting stringy or anything on you. And then just wrap this real tight and refrigerate this overnight, and we'll get back to this in the morning. Okay, so it's early the next morning, and the DETROMPE has been resting in the refrigerator overnight, and now we're going to make a butter block that we're going to be rolling into the DETROMPE. And now I'm using this 82% European style butter from the local restaurant supply. You can also have the Vermont Creamery butter available in your area. It is also 82%, and you can get that at the grocery store. So what I'm going to do here is start out by just softening this butter up here in the mixer for a minute, just so it's easier for me to spread into the parchment paper that I have prepared here. This butter has been out for a little bit. Took it out first thing this morning, so it's soft, but it's not really super soft. I just want to get this to a spreadable consistency, so it's a lot less of a hassle to get into the correct shape that we need here and the correct size. So just fit your mixer with the paddle attachment here. So then the next step is get yourself some parchment paper. Hopefully you have full sheets. If not, you can also use plastic wrap to do this. It's a little bit harder. This way, if you have parchment, it makes it a little easier to kind of measure off. What I have here is just a square drawn out with a roller. And then, so now what you can do, you just put that butter right into there. Inside the square, of course. Makes it easier if you have a bench scraper as well. Now just do your best to kind of press this down as good as you can here. So then you can fold this along the seams that you've created here. Kind of turn that over. So, and now you're going to want to put this in, put it on a sheet tray and then put it back in the refrigerator to firm this up. You wouldn't want to roll butter that's this soft into croissant dough because it's just going to melt and make a big mess, and you don't want that. So I'm going to firm this up for maybe 10 minutes or so, and we'll get back to this. Okay, so here is our DETROMPE that we mixed last evening, and here is the butter block that I just made. And really what you want to be looking for here, you want this to basically be the same consistency, I guess you could say, as the dough. Okay, so now that you have your butter block taken care of and your DETROMPE base dough here is ready to go, you can unmold your butter and set that to the side for a minute here. And so, as always, you're not going to want to go, rolling a lot of extra flour in there, and this dough shouldn't be super sticky. It's not totally tight and firm, but it's definitely not this doesn't feel sticky. So just kind of put a light dusting of flour down here. So I'm using a full-size pin here, and I'm going to roll this out to roughly a 14 by 14 square, and I am going to be leaving you a much smaller recipe than this. This is going to make probably 4 dozen croissants that I have in this recipe here. You want to keep your corners squared off here. Try to make a perfect square. So I ended up with roughly 14 and a half by 14 and a half. That's close enough. And try to get your butter sealed in here on a diamond pattern as such before the butter gets too much softer. So try not to pull too much, but the idea is to sort of make you're pulling the flaps into the center of the dough and trying to seal, sort of crimping it like that as you're sealing. You want to fully encase the butter inside there so that there's no visible butter. So then what I like to do is flip it over so that the seams are on the bottom for this rollout here. And we're going to roll this out to approximately a 1/2 inch thick rectangle. Use only as much flour as you absolutely need to use, and take your time squaring up your corners as you're working. And if the dough starts to fight you and it doesn't want to be rolled, then just give it a step back and get a drink or something, and just let it relax for 5-10 minutes. Let the gluten relax. Just keep everything squared off. Now in a professional bakery, you would put this dough through something called a sheeter, which makes this a simple, very quick process. It's not like hand rolling it, much easier. But I don't have one of those, unfortunately, so we are going to hand roll these. Okay, so this dough has now been rolled out to approximately a 1/2 inch thickness. And so now what we're going to do is what I call letter fold. There's letters and there's books. That's just how I say it. A letter is the classic way that I see most pastry chefs using for croissant type dough, laminated dough, is the 3 single turns, or what I call letters. So a letter is just like a trifold. It's exactly like what it sounds like. You're just folding over 1/3 of the dough, squaring off here as you're going, and then just bring over the other flap. Try to make sure that it's even. So you don't want too much of the dusting flour in between the layers, so just take a second here as you're doing your folds and kind of get that excess flour out of the layers, because that's not something you want in there. So we're just going to put this over here in thirds. Okay, so that is the first turn, and I'm just going to square this up. And now this dough is quite soft and the butter is quite soft, so it needs to be given a rest in the refrigerator. You want to wrap this really tightly and put it on a sheet tray and rest this for 30, maybe if it's really hot in your kitchen, maybe even 40 minutes. But you don't want to let the butter completely set up, so no more than about 40-45 minutes, even if it's pretty warm in your kitchen. Okay, so I've given our croissant dough about 45 minutes or so to firm up a little bit, and now I'm going to roll this back out again and give this another turn. So again, just roll this back out to that 1/2 inch thickness. So, okay, I've given this croissant dough another roll out to approximately a 1/2 inch thickness, and once again, just squaring up the corners here. And we're going to do the trifold again. Just dust off any extra flour. So now I'm going to wrap this tightly again, rest it for another 1/2 hour or so, and then roll it out one more time. So I think you get the idea on how to give the croissant dough the single turns like that. So when we come back, we're going to be rolling this out to its final rectangle. It's going to take this much dough, will take up most of this table here, and then we're going to be cutting, and we'll do croissants, the classic shape that everybody knows about, and we're also going to do the croissants au chocolat. So we'll be right back. Okay, so I have our final croissant dough here, and I rested this in the refrigerator for 2 hours. That's a minimum. You could leave it wrapped and leave it overnight if you wanted to, so you could roll this early in the morning, roll and shape it early in the morning. But now I'm going to be rolling this out to a rectangle long rectangle here, slightly less than a 1/4 inch thick. So just take your time with this. It's going to take a few minutes here to get this rolled out. So we're going to roll this out, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to shape 2 different types of pastries. The classic all butter croissant and the classic croissant au chocolat. And then we'll proof them, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, so here I have our croissant dough, and it's rolled out to slightly less than a 1/4 inch thick here. So for the classic croissants, what you want to do here is just kind of like square up your side. So just mark off 4.5 inches. And then cut to the corner. And then you just cut that right there. Hopefully you can see what I did there. And so now what you're doing with this is just basically rolling this just like this. And this should make, at the 4.5 inches and the 10-inch width, this should make somewhere around a around a 3.5 or maybe possibly 4 ounce croissant. So that's basically how you do that. Set that to the side there. And now obviously the next one has to be on the other side, so you're marking off again approximately 4.5 inches, and now you bring this to the other side. So once again, then just cut your center, and starting with that cut slot, just start rolling with your hands and kind of shaping that. And then you can slightly pull it a little bit and sort of rest the croissant on that little point. So that's how you shape those classic ones. So then for the croissants au chocolat, I get these chocolate batons like this. It's sort of like a sweet, bittersweet, semi-sweet, or it's a sweeter dark chocolate basically, and they come like that. So what you want to do, I use 2 for each croissant au chocolat, and so just kind of put that in on the one, and then put the other one down on that seam and fold that over again. You want the chocolate kind of poking out just a little bit so you can see that it's chocolate, and then you just put that on a sheet tray. Just sit the seam side down on a sheet tray. So one more here. Just kind of let that let the chocolate kind of poke through a little bit. Crimp that down just a tad. Put another baton on there. So that's how you shape those. If you don't have the batons, see these batons like this, these are meant These batons like that, they're kind of meant to survive the baking process, so the chocolate doesn't just melt out of the pastry all over your tray and you have a big chocolatey mess. But if you don't have these, then you could always substitute semi-sweet chocolate chips or something like that. Would probably work decently, because chocolate chips too, they're formulated to survive the baking process. So although I've never done them like that, I can't see why chocolate chips wouldn't survive the process. So that's how they're shaped, and you're going to want to put these onto, put all the pastries on sheet trays lined with parchment, and so you're going to want to proof these. I'll go over the proofing. I want to shape all these, and then we'll go over the proofing process here a little bit. Okay guys, I have these pastries all shaped, and now just a word about the proofing process. You can, if it's summertime and it's humid in your kitchen, you don't just let them out. It's a rather humid day here in central Pennsylvania. It is rather humid inside here, so I'm just going to kind of let these proof at room temperature until they're about double in size. And then if you have to, if they don't double in size in about an hour, then you can just turn your oven on for a few seconds and get a little tiny bit of heat in the oven, and then you can proof them like that in there for until they're done proofing, till they just about but not quite double in size. They should be kind of puffy and proofed out before you try baking these. And I'm going to put an egg wash on these as well, just beaten egg with some heavy cream. And so we're going to do that. Then I'm going to stripe these chocolate croissants with some melted bittersweet chocolate. And yeah, that's about all there is to it. I'm going to bake these off here in a little while. One other thing that comes to mind about the proofing, that things that where I've had a real problem with, is if you don't have a professional proof box, then and you try to proof these, like if it's winter time and you're going to proof these in the winter, it's the middle of January and it's cold out, then you're going to need to proof these probably in the oven. But make sure that your oven is not going to be over about 85 degrees inside. You do not want to put these into any type of real warmth over about 80 degrees is ideal. 85 is the absolute most I would go. And the reason is because this type of pastry, the butter is going to just melt out and make an ungodly mess on your pan, and then they're ruined, and you might as well not even bother trying to bake them off. So that's about it. We'll come back after these are all baked off. I would probably, if you're using a convection oven, as I will be, I'll probably put the oven up to about 375, and that's just because my oven has hot spots. So if you have a professional oven, that's a different situation. I do not have a nice oven, so I'm just going to proof these. I'm just going to bake these at probably 375 for, I think they take about 15 minutes or so. But just make sure you put an egg wash over these pastries before you bake them, and we'll come back and have a look at what these look like when they're finished. Alright, so there we go, guys. That's the finished product, and these ended up taking about 20 minutes. I did turn them around in my oven at about 10 minutes, so that gives you kind of an idea. So we got pretty decent open structure on these. I am still working on this formula. That's about as open as I would like them to be. I already ate one, so I can tell you, believe me, these are absolutely delicious. When you make these in the old European way with the fresh yeast, definitely worthwhile, even though fresh yeast can be a little tricky to get sometimes, and it's a little trickier to work with. I definitely think there's a reason why the Europeans tend to prefer that yeast. I think that it gives it a little bit of a superior flavor, in my humble opinion. But there you go. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.